program is the Active Center. It's created by David Sappe.
Pronounced Seppi.
Pronounced Seppi.
Hey there and welcome. We're going to tackle a question today that, on the surface, seems pretty simple, but oh boy, it has sparked some fierce debate for almost 100 years. The question is this: is fascism a left-wing or a right-wing ideology? It's a real puzzle, and you know what? We're going to unpack it together. You've probably seen it, right? Someone will confidently say, oh, fascism is far right, and then 2 seconds later, someone else jumps in arguing the exact opposite. So what's the deal? Well, in this explainer, we're going to dig into the evidence for both sides of the argument, looking at what the source material actually says. Okay, so there is a mainstream consensus, an answer that most political scientists would probably give you. But, and this is a big but, it's not the only answer out there. If we look a little closer, there's a really compelling counterargument that pops up, and it challenges that consensus by looking at things from a completely different angle. It's actually a fascinating way to see how we even define these political labels in the first place. All right, first up, let's tackle the most common view out there. This is the case for classifying fascism as a far-right ideology. And it's really built on a few key ideas. Ideas that put it in direct, and I mean direct, opposition to traditional left-wing thinking, like socialism and communism. So this argument really rests on four main pillars, and each one of them isn't just a small disagreement. We're talking about a fundamental and often really violent clash with the core goals of classical socialism. This is the big reason why you'll find most historians and political scientists placing fascism firmly on the far right. And right here, you see this massive clash of worldviews. I mean, they're polar opposites. For fascism, the absolute central obsession is the nation, or in some cases, the master race. Everything, and I mean everything, serves that one single goal. Now, you compare that to classical socialism, what's its big rallying cry? Workers of the world, unite! It's all about breaking down national borders, not building them up. Okay, and here's another huge point of conflict. Fascism is all about a natural order, a super rigid social pyramid with one powerful leader at the very top. It doesn't just tolerate inequality, it celebrates it. Socialism, it's the complete opposite. Its whole deal is being egalitarian, working towards a society with no classes at all. You just can't square those two things. They're totally incompatible. Now, this next point about property is absolutely crucial, and it gets a little nuanced. See, the fascist state had total control over the economy, no question. But, and this is key, it didn't get rid of private property. In fact, fascist regimes often teamed up with big business and the industrial elites. That's just worlds away from Marxist socialism, which says that the means of production, the factories, the land, all of it, must be owned by everyone, by society. But, like I said, that's only one side of the coin. Now, what happens if we change our perspective? Let's for a second shift our focus away from nationalism and look instead at the role of the all-powerful state and how it treats the individual. When you do that, well, a very different and pretty provocative picture starts to take shape. We have to remember something really important here. A lot of the early fascist thinkers didn't consider themselves right-wing in the way we think of it today. Not at all. They actually saw their movement as a third way. They wanted to create a revolutionary new system that would harness the collectivist power of socialism, but get rid of all that international stuff. Their goal was a new and, in their minds, superior national socialism. So, to really get this argument, we need to talk about a key idea: corporatism. This was the economic engine of fascism. And here's how it worked. On paper, sure, you might own your factory, but in reality, the state told you what to make, how much to make, and even what to pay your people. Your private property was completely submitted to whatever the state decided was the national interest. And this quote right here, it just nails it. It really gets to the core of the idea. Private business owners weren't really owners anymore. They were basically just managers working for the state. Ownership was tolerated only as long as it served the government's goals. And if you stepped out of line, well, your property could be taken just like that. This kind of top-down economic control, it just doesn't look like traditional right-wing capitalism, does it? So let's break down this alternative view. It basically comes down to three things. First, that fascism is all about the collective, crushing the individual for the good of the state, which, sounds a lot like state socialism. Second, its economic system, corporatism, basically gave the state total control over the economy. And third, fascism was a revolutionary movement. It was actually hostile to old-school traditional right-wing institutions like the monarchy or the established church because it saw them as competition for total power. So we're left with this puzzle, right? How can both of these arguments seem to make sense? How can an ideology be totally anti-socialist in its goals, but kind of socialist in its methods? Well, this question brings us right to the heart of the whole debate. And the answer really comes down to a question of priority. It all depends on what you focus on. It's like looking at the same object through two different lenses. If you zoom in on the ultranationalism and the fact that it kept private property, yeah, it looks pretty far right. But if you zoom in on the all-powerful totalitarian state and its absolute focus on the collective over the individual, well, then you can see why some would make the case for it being on the left. So here's the most important takeaway. This whole debate, it isn't really about the historical facts. I mean, both sides generally agree on what fascists did and what they said. The real disagreement is about which of those facts matter most. Which of their beliefs and actions are the most essential, the ones that truly define the ideology. It's all a question of emphasis. And all of that leaves us with one last big question to chew on. When we're trying to understand any complex political idea, what's more important? What truly defines it? Is it the goals the ideology claims to be fighting for? Or is it the methods it uses to get there? It's something to think about for sure. Thanks so much for joining me.